We have all had that moment, a split-second mistake, a wrong turn, a word spoken in anger. And in the immediate aftermath, we all wish for the impossible, the ability to hit rewind, reverse the damage, and piece it back together. If you sit down to watch the hit Korean drama, The Light in Your Eyes, you are immediately led to believe you are settling in for a light-hearted fantasy built entirely around this exact desire. The premise is straightforward and familiar. A 25-year-old woman finds a magical watch on a beach. When she turns the dial, she discovers she can manipulate time. Soon after, a terrible accident takes her father's life. Desperate, she uses the watch to rewind time over and over again until she finally saves him. But tampering with the universe requires payment. The cost of preventing his death is her youth. She wakes up the next morning having aged overnight into a 70-year-old woman. By setting up a classic sci-fi consequence, sacrificing youth for the life of a loved one, the writers make us perfectly comfortable with a familiar genre trope. And because we so readily accept the rules of a time travel adventure, we are completely blinded to the devastating reality hiding in plain sight. For the first 9 episodes, the central conflict plays out exactly how you would expect. We watch a young 25-year-old mind trapped inside an elderly body, struggling to navigate a world that suddenly treats her like a senior citizen. The show leans heavily into comedic setups. We see her awkwardly trying to interact with her friends, stumbling through physical limitations, and relying on bright fantasy elements to keep the tone light. This effectively distracts the audience from the deep tragedy of her lost youth. But as the episodes progress, subtle inconsistencies begin to pile up. The entire sci-fi setup is actually an elaborate narrative Trojan horse. The writers used the magic watch as a narrative disguise, hiding a revelation that redefines the boundaries of television storytelling. Everything shatters at the climax of episode 10. The established rules of the show's universe violently break down. The narrative drops a revelation that pulls the rug out from under the audience. There is no time travel. There is no magical watch. The fantasy we have been watching for 10 hours was a lie. Our protagonist never magically aged overnight. She has always been an elderly woman. She is a patient suffering from advanced Alzheimer's disease, living out her final days in a modern care facility. To understand the cognitive reality behind this script, look at this diagram mapping out her mind. You can see a timeline splitting into 2 diverging paths. The bottom line represents objective reality, which moves linearly forward, but the top line shows her subjective memory constantly looping backward. Her memories of being a 25-year-old time traveler are actually the desperate projections of a fragmented mind trying to process a traumatic past event. Notice how that subjective path continually loops. The writers mapped the traditional mechanics of a time travel story directly onto the clinical realities of memory loss. When an Alzheimer's patient experiences sudden, jarring moments of feeling displaced in time, waking up in an unfamiliar room, surrounded by technology they don't understand, or looking in the mirror and not recognizing the aged face staring back at them, it mirrors the exact sensation of a time traveler waking up in the wrong era. To them, the confusion isn't a symptom, it is their absolute reality. The scriptwriter weaponized a sci-fi trope to build an empathy engine. Instead of observing cognitive decline from the outside, we are forced to experience the terrifying subjectivity of dementia firsthand, locked inside the patient's mind. With this reality exposed, we have to look back at those early comedic scenes. We saw her feeling entirely out of place with modern technology and struggling to connect with her peers. These moments are no longer lighthearted jokes about a time traveler adjusting to a new era. They are accurate, heartbreaking clinical symptoms of an Alzheimer's patient experiencing severe temporal disorientation. The fantasy world dissolves. The quirky allies and exaggerated villains in her time travel adventure are actually the real people in her nursing home. The villains she fought are just exhausted nurses and doctors trying to keep her safe, and her allies are estranged family members visiting her care facility. And the specific root of her delusion, the obsessive, repeated rewinding of time to save her father from an accident, was a repressed, agonizing memory of a real tragedy from her youth. She spent her final days desperately trying to fix a mistake that had haunted her entire adult life. This realization demands a reassessment of every frame from the first 9 episodes. The drama now reveals itself as a psychological study of memory fragmentation. In the aftermath of this reveal, both the protagonist and the viewer are left in a stark new reality. The comforting illusion of control has been completely stripped away. We started with the human desire to rewind time and correct our mistakes, but that desire is now contrasted against the harsh, unstoppable, and strictly linear reality of human aging. Time only moves in one direction. Yet despite the grim reality of a degenerative disease taking her memories, the show's conclusion does not leave us in despair. The thematic core becomes clear. The obsession with undoing past mistakes and the endless desire to control time ultimately robs us of the ability to experience the life we actually have right in front of us. The final philosophical message of the story is simple. A meaningful life is not one free of mistakes, but one made up of ordinary, fleeting, present moments. This narrative structure shifts our perspective toward the elderly and those facing cognitive decline. By placing the audience inside their reality, the show illustrates their confusion and loss with a clarity that medical charts can never reach. Exceptional storytelling shows us the human condition in a new light, highlighting the fragile, undeniable value of today. If you value stories that challenge your perspective, hit the subscribe button below. And if you haven't seen The Light in Your Eyes, take the time to watch it. Experience the story for yourself, and remember to appreciate the present moment, because it is the only time we truly own.